Well, today I am really, really excited to have my good friend Brad McKinney from Cavender Auto Family on with us. Brad, we have all kinds of great conversations, feels like weekly, maybe even a little bit more than that, with a lot of WrenchWay Cavender type of, the relationship in general. But we've been talking for a while about having you on the podcast, and it's pretty cool to finally make it happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm definitely very excited. And to your point, we've had lots of fun conversations. I look forward to our bi-weekly calls because it's always a little bit of business and a little bit of fun all rolled into one call. Sometimes I wonder if Houston's like, why am I on here? They're just chatting about nothing for a little while. So I'm looking forward
Those
to
are the
today
fun
as
ones.
well.
Yeah, those are the fun ones. I think we could record most of our conversations, and people would learn about a little bit about everything. I think maybe a little about life and a little bit about recruiting, which is what we're here to talk about today. You run the recruiting show at Cavender Auto Family.
Yeah, so I'm the director of talent acquisition and learning and development for the Cavender Auto Family. I've been with the organization a little over 2 years now, and by a little, I mean by 5 days. My anniversary was on Valentine's Day. Um, and we're an organization based out of San Antonio, Texas, and we have 15 locations across Texas and Oklahoma. Wide variety of brands, Highline, domestic. One of the stores under our portfolio is Cavender Toyota in San Antonio, Texas, the second largest Toyota store in the U.S. Um, as well as, I mean, Audi, Subaru, Lexus, Mercedes Benz, BMW, a little bit of everything, truthfully. So recruiting is near and dear to my heart, and the learning and development side is also a very big passion of mine. So it's been really fun the last 2 years helping this organization grow from the recruiting and the training side of things.
And you didn't just jump into Cavender Auto Family. You didn't just jump into it with your first time recruiting being here, right? Like you had some recruiting background.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been in recruiting now for, geez, I guess a little over 10 years. I had to look at what year we're in. A little over 10 years. And this is my second stint in the automotive industry. I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in automotive, I've worked in traditional retail environments. Um, and automotive for me is probably been one of the most rewarding, while also I think most people can agree sometimes frustrating parts of recruiting. But it's always a lot of fun. Every day is a new challenge, a new adventure. You always get to meet and interact with amazing people in the automotive industry. Before coming on here, with Cavender, my first stint in automotive was with Ken Garf. Working with them, I was a senior recruiter on the team there and really helped rebuild their recruiting team from the ground up, which was a great learning experience and a great adventure. And I think our industry just has a lot of opportunities when it comes to recruiting. And what I mean by opportunities is opportunities to grow and be better and really advertise our industry as a career path, also looking at sales and technicians, right? Not just as a job. And I think that's a huge opportunity our industry has is there's a lot of people who make 20, 30, 50-year careers out of being in automotive. And a lot of the old stigmas around automotive no longer exist. And so I think from an employment branding perspective, from a interviewing perspective, and just overall recruiting, our industry has a huge opportunity to do more and do better.
We'll say the one thing that anybody that would meet Brad would understand right off the bat is his passion for recruiting and really for this industry. And I think what makes you unique is that you view it as a challenge and that you are looking for different opportunities and different ways to be able to just be really good at your job, right? I don't think you're the typical sit on your hands and kind of wait for those inbound leads of people or wait for we talk a lot about technicians, wait for technicians to come to you. You're always kind of innovative in the way that you're going after this. This what I think is in most dealerships a big issue is being short staffed, like going after it proactively rather than just kind of sitting back and hoping for the best, right? Like you're constantly pushing the limits of what you can do to improve your organization and getting people right sized and getting enough people into the dealership. So just a lot of credit to you for everything that you've done to kind of think in a way that is a little bit more offense, right? A little bit more offense than defense, and really trying to push the boundaries of recruiting.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I do really try hard. And I mean, am I a miracle worker by any means? No, I'm not. My some of our leaders, they challenge me on that and say I definitely can be. But I mean, at the end of the day, the recruiting eco space, if you will, is forever evolving and forever changing, especially since COVID. A lot changed, not just for our industry, but for the world after COVID. Um, and so when it comes to recruiting, you have to stay on top of what are the trends? What are people looking for? What does the unemployment data show that comes out? You have to constantly be in the know to help pivot yourself, because if you stay stagnant or you have a post and pray mentality, you're gonna struggle, right? I mean, that's just the reality of recruiting. You have to get yourself out there. You have to have your employment brand out there. You have to go to career fairs. You have to have your recruiting team do their weekly sourcing. I don't know. We'll talk about some of that a little bit later. But I mean, if you're just sitting back and posting a job and hoping that you're going to get 50 applicants, for some jobs that will work. For probably 60% of them, it won't. Especially as we talk a little bit about technicians today. That's just, I mean, unless you get lucky, which does happen.
It does.
But it does. But at the same time, there's a thought process behind that of, are you getting lucky, or are you getting the application from a tech who can't get a job anywhere else? Right. And so it's thinking about that as well, versus having the ability to go out there and pick the people you want for your shop by being aggressive and selecting them by using Indeed sourcing tool, by using Facebook targeted ads, by using all these things that are at our disposal in the world of social media that we live in today. Having more control over who you're bringing into your shop and who you're bringing into your automotive group plays a massive role in the overall success. I mean, it'd be easy for me to sit back and do my job and just post jobs out there and hope for the best, right? I'd have the easiest job in the world. I wouldn't have it for very long.
Yeah, and
The
I
other
think
side.
that's a lot of the issue that I think a lot of, whether it's owners or fixed ops directors or just even service managers, that are the ones, especially service managers, the ones on the front lines that are like, I need people, I need people. And it's, if you look at your HR team or your recruiting staff, if you're lucky enough to have a recruiting staff, and you're like, I don't think they're hearing me. Like, we need people. We can't just sit around and wait for this. We've got to go get them. And I think you understand that as well as anybody I've seen in the industry, in really being able to relate to whoever that person is that is having that struggle, and then being able to go with a different mindset, different approach. I think a lot of times, at least in my experience and talking to a lot of people in the industry, finding techs is a lot harder than finding a manager, right? Or finding in at some level ways to get in front of those folks, because if you're putting an executive position out there, you might have a lot more applications than if you put a technician position out there, right? Or it just, maybe you can provide more visibility to that position, because you do have more executives and more managers that are actually out on you know LinkedIn or Facebook every day, whereas a tech, maybe not as much.
You're absolutely right. And it's getting creative with how you're advertising it. And, I cannot stress enough the importance of employment branding and how big of a difference that has made for our organization. And employment branding can be a lot of different things, right? There's obviously the Glassdoor and Indeed side of things. It is not lost on me that those platforms are extremely expensive. For larger automotive groups, it's a much easier pill to swallow. Like if you have 40, 50 stores, the 20 to 30 grand it costs for those pages isn't a huge deal. But if you're a smaller auto group with just one or two stores, or even really less than five, that's a big pill to swallow. And there's other ways you can get creative to advertise your employment brand. And for me, the biggest one is your website. You know, what does your careers page look like? How are you driving people to your careers page? Do you have, is it just a generic careers page with just the links for all your dealerships on it? Or do you have a tab dedicated just to technicians? You know, and I'll be transparent. That's something we're working on as we speak, is getting a separate tab on our careers page just for technicians. And you'll love this part, Jay. That's going to drive them to our WrenchWay pages. A little self-shameless plug there for you. But it's something that makes a huge difference. You know, the in the smaller entry barrier there is for a technician to get eyes on your shop, eyes on your company, and to learn what they need to know if this is an organization they want to work for, the more likely you are to get a tech, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where we will do employment branding campaigns with no end result in mind. You know, you can't just go use it when you need something out of it. It's got to be a consistent thing, right? You need to be doing it on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be massive $10,000, $20,000 campaigns, right? You can do one Facebook targeted ad for $600-700, run it for a couple of weeks, and do it nationwide and let it just be generic. Hey, Cavender Auto Family's looking for technicians. Check us out on Glassdoor. Check us out on our careers page, right? Just get the name out there as much as possible. So when the time does come when you need a tech because someone retired or they went somewhere else, you've got that brand out there. So once that job is posted, people are like, oh, I've been seeing stuff for them online for the last 6 months. I've been waiting for a spot to open up. And I think that's the dream world every service manager and fixed ops manager wants to be in, is where you have a line of techs beating at your door to get into your shop because you've done such a good job deploying your employment brand out there across the nation. And with your employment brand, you also need to be targeted, is the best word I can think of for that. And knowing your market as a whole and the type of individuals that are going to be successful in your market. I'll use one of our markets as an example. Our Lubbock market. Lubbock is a big town, but with a small town vibe. And we have noticed as an organization where a lot of times people who come from very, very large cities, while they'll stay for about a year or so, they typically want to go back to that large city vibe, right? Unless that's something they're targeting as more of a small city. And so typically when we're doing our campaigns for that market, whether it's leadership or technicians or salespeople or whatever, right? I typically try to target towns that are similar size to Lubbock, you know, so it's an easy transition for those individuals. You know, if you take a tech from a market like Houston, for example, I'll use my hometown, versus if you take a tech from that market and try to bring them to a smaller market, if they're used to being able to flag 200 ROs a pay or hours a pay period, and then you take them and put them in a market where they're only going to be able to do 90 to 100 hours a pay period, one of two things has to give, right? You either need to pay them a lot more money to offset that, or they're going to come in, be there for 30 days, realize that either you oversold and underdelivered, or this isn't a permanent home for them, and you end up losing them. So you got to be really strategic with your employment branding and with your targeting to make sure that you're hitting the right markets that are going to benefit you long term, not just short term.
Yeah, and you're trying to find that right fit for that right location, right? And I think even with a group like yours, not every shop has the same culture, has the same feel when you're inside of it. And some might be better suited for one person versus another. And being able to find that right fit. And obviously, if somebody's certified with a manufacturer, they're probably going to go to that location, right? Because that's where they already have all of their training and certification. So, you know, I think there's kind of that fine line that you walk in getting the right person to the right place that you're going to have the most success with. Not to say that you can't put somebody that maybe doesn't check all of the boxes into a location, but you really, you know, if it's something where they're going to be a fish out of water and not feel comfortable, I think that can be a challenge. And from my time in industry, we had a couple locations that weren't too far from each other. And if a tech lived between them, it would be easy enough to pick one location or the other. But it was the same brand. And what was funny is one of the shops was very, this is it's business. We're not here to make friends. We're here to work. And the other one was very much the opposite, right? Where it was, we're going to have fun, we're going to work hard, but we're going to have the music cranked up. We're going to have, just a different environment. And I always said, if I were to take one from this location and put them over there, I don't know that they would like it, right? But
Their brain
because
would
they're in that one
explode.
specific, yeah, but it's really kind of, I think that's a unique part of a recruiter's job, is trying to figure out that puzzle and how you get the right person into the right spot. That is where I think employer branding helps a lot. And when we talk about employer branding, I think a lot of it comes down to getting somebody comfortable with what that culture in that shop is, right? Like in somebody like Cavender Auto Family does a lot of amazing things, like philanthropic, things that are so cool.
Yeah, I mean, we raised
But
$500,000. I mean, for all kinds of organizations throughout the year. We do targeted campaigns as an organization. I mean, I can write a list of the things we do in every one of our markets. I know we encourage and try to push all of our stores to do one give back event every single month. Get ingrained in your community, be a part of it, give back just as much as they're giving to you, right? And like I know right now, one of our dealer principals, Rick Cavender, is the pink tie guy. He's doing that big campaign right now, and he loves it every single year. And it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart as well, because my mom had breast cancer at one point. So I love all the things that we do as an organization to give back to the people who are giving to us, right? I mean, we're only in business because of our customers. You don't have customers, you don't have a business at the end of the day. And so it's it's really heartwarming to be with an organization that cares about the community so much.
yeah,
That's leaps and bounds for me personally. And it was something that was very important to me when I was looking for an organization to join a couple of years ago. Is I wanted a company who didn't just care about the dollar. They wanted to give back to the community. They wanted to be involved, and I think that's such a vital part of any business. Truthfully, is just doing what you can to give back.
well, and I completely agree, and I think it's so cool for any organization that's out there that is proactively going out of their way to help people. And I think when we talk about purpose and somebody's sense of purpose in a company, if you see that, if you have visibility to everything that your company is doing for people, that does drive some loyalty. That does drive, some, I think, trust that, hey, this company is in it for the right reasons, and I want to be a part of that. Now, I also think there's two tiers to this, right? You've got that Cavender blanket that does so many great things, but then you also have the things that happen within the walls of that building, and really being able to like the people that you work with, to be able to, you know, to be able to just enjoy your day. I think there's a lot of, I almost feel like that's such an underrated piece when technicians are out looking for a new job, or anybody for that matter, not just technicians, that, the money's great, the benefits are great, but I also, at the end of the day, just want to like going into work. I want to like the people that are around me. And I think a lot of times, one of the, as we talk about employer branding, one of the things that maybe we don't do a good enough job of as an industry is kind of showing off those people in those locations. Because then when you piece that all together, where you've got, okay, Cavender Auto Family does all of this amazing stuff. And hey, the people in that location seem really cool. Like, you almost drive that magnetic pull for people to want to come work for you. And, from a recruiter standpoint, that's what you want at the end of the day. And you want to bring them in and change their life in a really good way, right? If you're bringing a technician in, you don't want to set them up for failure. You want them to come in and really, knock it out of the park and enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, and something I encourage all of my recruiters to think about, and my managers for that matter, is they're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. The average candidate, and this isn't just tech specific, this is just nationwide as a general average, they're interviewing with at least four other companies at the same time they're interviewing with you. And if you go into it with a mindset of, oh, well, I'm the best shop in the area, they should want to work with me regardless, I don't need to put my best foot forward, you're going to lose 95% of the time. That's just the reality of it. And you need to get to know them just as much as they want to get to know us, right? And it has to go both ways. And you need to get creative with the way you interview these technicians and the questions you're asking and just the overall experience you give them. A lot of times, it's first to offer is the person that gets the tech, and there's also other factors that play into that, like the interview experience itself. If you interviewed a tech on Monday and you've had no communication with them at all and it's Thursday or Friday, you've probably already lost them. They're probably already gone, because I can guarantee you somebody out there is doing a better job at communicating with them than you are. And what that does is that tells the story of how are you going to communicate with them as their manager when they come on board. Everything you do from the moment you meet that tech from the first time to the moment they start sets that tone.
Yeah,
And
I couldn't agree more. I had a personal story where I had started with a dealership, and I didn't get the warm and fuzzies right off the bat. And within like 2 hours of me being there, I'm like, I made a wrong call here. Like I shouldn't have done this. And that forever kind of lives in the back of your mind. And it is one of those things where you're trying to have the right attitude, you're trying to do the right things, but and it wasn't that it was a bad dealership, it was just a bad fit for me, right? Like the
mhm.
personalities didn't match mine, and I had trouble communicating with them, and it was one of those things where it was just, you knew it, your gut feel as soon as you
You
walked in the
walked
door
in,
and
it's like,
saw like
oh
that
no.
onboarding. Yeah, it wasn't one that gave you a good feeling. And so there is so much importance to that. And as you talked about the interview process, you work so hard to get in front of these folks. And all of this stuff that we talked about with employer branding is to drive them in the door to have a conversation with us. If they don't get that sense that they're a priority for you, it's easy for them to, especially technicians, they can go right down the road and get another job, right? So like it I think so many people in our industry lack that intentionality and lack that urgent need to get back to somebody. And if you do that and you don't prioritize it, you fall behind really, really fast.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people in our industry need to realize is the tech shortage that's out there is not a secret, right? We're not the dealerships themselves and the shops themselves are not the only ones who know that information, right? These techs know they are a hot commodity. They know that they are needed everywhere, and they know that they hold, I mean, 90% of the cards in the overall equation. I mean, there's a lot of shops out there that are desperate that'll be happy that you just have a pulse and have some certifications and can come in and turn wrenches on day one. That's not what they're looking for, right? They want that, to your point from before, Jay. They want that positive culture. They want that good onboarding experience. They want growth opportunities. They want all of these things. And so when thinking about the interview itself, you need to be showing them all of this, not just through communication, but so let me talk a little bit about what we try to do,
Yeah.
and what we've learned as a best practice. So um, with my recruiting team, so typically we're the first line of contact, right? To take that work off of our managers, because at the end of the day, they're there to run service departments, right? And so the recruiting team is responsible for making that first contact. I asked my team to reach out 3 different ways, at least 2 times, to every technician that applies: phone call, email, and text message, right? First, give them a phone call, leave a message. I recognize that most techs are techs and they're working in a shop throughout the day. So it's not easy for them to step away and take a phone call in the middle of the day. Imagine if one of your techs did that, right? You'd be like, why is he walking away to take a phone call in the middle of pulling a transmission? Right? This doesn't make any sense. The second form of communication I always encourage them to do is text, right? You're more likely to get a response on a text if they're in the middle of something than a phone call. And then the last line is an email. 50-50 shot on if you get a response on that. Just call that what it is. But I encourage my recruiters to do that at least twice, all three at least 2 times before we decide, okay, we need to move on from this candidate. Um, from there, once we get them on the phone, whether it's a phone call or a Teams call, we try to do Teams calls with all of our candidates when possible. If not, again, we recognize that techs are working in shops. They may only have 10 minutes to talk to you for during their lunch break or walking out to their car. And so make that first initial contact real quick and easy, check some simple boxes, right? Hey, do you know where the store is located? What certifications do you have? This is what we're looking for. This is our culture. This is our company. Do you know where this job's located? Have you thought about moving here already? Is this an intentional move, or did you just see our job post and thought this was interesting? Just get kind of the generic information. And then from there, just getting them set up with the fixed ops managers and letting them be the ones that lead that conversation, right? The ones that show them the shop, the ones that get them excited about the finer details of the shop itself. That's going to truly get a tech excited, because at the end of the day, the fixed ops managers are the ones who have control over all of that. They're the ones that know all of that information. And from there, it's really treating the tech as if they are an executive, right? Let's encourage them to come down to the shop. If that requires you to fly them in, then guess what? That requires you to fly them in. If it's a senior master or a GM world-class tech, what's a $400 flight in the grand scheme of things if you're able to get that person to start on your team? And I can tell you, if they're making that effort and saying, okay, I want to come fly down and look at your shop, you've probably already got the hook in to some degree, right? But don't just bring them in, sit them in your office for 30, 45 minutes and say, okay, well, let me know what you want to do. No, walk them around the shop, introduce them to your foreman, take them out to lunch with your general manager. I'll give you a prime example. We got through WrenchWay, we got very blessed through a campaign that we did. And we had 2 senior master Ford technicians apply for one of our jobs on WrenchWay. We reached out to them, had the fixed ops manager be the lead on this one, because my recruiter at the time was super swamped on other stuff. And we were able to get them to come down from Dallas, and they went out to lunch and dinner with the general manager and the fixed ops manager. And through that conversation, we learned that the shop they had been at for the last 10 years, they had never met the general manager one time.
Why?
And
Wow.
for us, my GM was just taken back by that. He was like, what do you mean you've never met your GM? And they're like, yeah, I mean, I know the guy's name, but if he walked past me in the hallway, I wouldn't know it was him. Whereas our GM, he's in the shop once a day walking around saying, hey guys, how you doing? Do y'all need anything? He's shaking hands. How's the family? Doing all the things, right? Because the shop is part of the business, right? And so it's not just leading it up to the fixed ops manager. Get your GM involved. If this is a tech you really want, don't be afraid to go above and beyond. Invite them back, and if they have significant others, hey, bring your wives to town and we can all go out to dinner. Give them that red carpet experience to get them excited about what it's going to be like to work here. Because the mentality you have to have is, if this is the way they treat me before I'm an employee, how are they going to treat me when I am one? That's what's going to get a tech excited. But you also have to be careful to not overpromise and underdeliver. You need to be realistic and set realistic expectations. And that's where the shop tour comes into play. That's when letting them hang out with the foreman for an hour that day they come to town. Just literally leave them with the foreman and let them hang out for an hour. Let the foreman give them the good, the bad, the ugly of what the reality of the shop is. That's just as important as laying out the red carpet. Because the last thing you want is having a tech come in, to your story from before, start 3 days in, realize, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just moved my family
What did
down
I do?
here. Yeah, what did I do? This is a dumpster fire. So you have to set realistic expectations, but you also need to put your best foot forward. Just thinking that a tech's going to apply, you're going to interview them, and then they're going to move to your town a month later, and just hoping it all works out perfectly. Sure, sometimes it does, right? That's going to happen. You're going to get lucky. The reality of it is, if you are not on top of that tech, if you're not touching base with them every couple of days, say, okay, this sounds great. I need to go talk to my significant other. Okay, great. Don't let them follow up with you. You need to be following up with them. You need to be calling them. If it's been a week or so, and they're like, yeah, we're still talking about it, don't wait to put an offer out there. I had that conversation with one of my managers a few weeks ago. He's like, yeah, he's still talking it over with his wife. Well, why haven't we made him an offer yet? Oh, well, I don't want to make him an offer until I know if he wants to come. Well, he doesn't know if he wants to come if he doesn't know what the offer is. So it's like we're fighting against ourselves here, right? Like there's no harm in just extending the offer of what we're going to offer this individual. And then they have all of the facts in front of them that they need to make an educated decision on if this is the right move for them and their family. And so it's challenging ourselves a lot of times is the way I think about it, to put your ego away and realize you're not the hottest thing on the block, right? You need to be putting your best foot forward and being aggressive within reason with these technicians and getting them brought on board, constantly communicating with them, giving them the red carpet experience, and thinking about this isn't just a new tech for your shop. This is them, a lot of times, more than likely, relocating their entire family to a new city and recommitting their lives to this new city into your shop. And you need to treat it accordingly, right? You know, it's not like, oh,
Yes.
here's your offer for $50 a flat hour. Let me know when you want to move. Right? Like if that was me, I'd be like, this guy really doesn't understand the significance of what I'm thinking about doing right now. Do they really even care?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that goes into it. And our mindset, and this is just my personal opinion, our mindset as an industry has to change towards that. Right? We need to think more proactively than reactively. We need to be more aggressive in our intentions with these technicians. You know, I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten from managers in automotive or out of automotive. This isn't industry specific, saying, oh my gosh, I love this guy. He's perfect for my shop, this, that, and the other, but I still want to interview 5 or 6 more people. What? If this guy is perfect, or girl is perfect for that matter, why do we need to interview more people? Why don't we be intentional with this one candidate? Like, well, I just don't know. Well, let's talk about what you don't know. Is it you're
Yeah.
just scared to do it because it's the first person you talk to and you're worried somebody better might be out there still? But you don't know what, like, that's not guaranteed, right? So let's be intentional and aggressive with what we're doing and put our best foot forward. So, I mean, as you know, I can talk about this topic for hours if you let me.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I can do this for hours, but it's really important with just to summarize all of that: the speed in recruiting, the intent of recruiting, knowing what you're looking for. And I want to get a little bit more into the interview itself a little bit later in the podcast if we have time.
Yeah.
But the mentality around what you're interviewing for, and to your point from before, if they're OEM certified already, you know that. If they've been a tech for 5 or 10 years, you know more than likely they're going to check the boxes there. But do they check the cultural boxes, right? Do they have what you're looking for? And do we have what they're looking for? Because that's sometimes more important. Do we have what they're looking for? You know, because I think
Yeah.
we can all agree not all shops are created equal.
No, and I think it's good to acknowledge that. Technicians, have you checked out WrenchWay yet? It's a free online community for automotive and diesel professionals just like you. Whether you're job hunting or just looking to connect with other industry professionals, WrenchWay makes it easy to explore opportunities, stay updated on industry news, and help promote the technician profession. With WrenchWay, you can see detailed job info you care about before you apply or interview, stay in the loop with what's happening in the auto and diesel community, explore technician compensation in your area and across the U.S., track your certifications, and much more. Join the WrenchWay community for free at wrenchway.com or download the WrenchWay mobile app. Links are in the show notes. The other thing I want to talk a little bit more about was when you talked about not overselling a candidate, right? Because when you are laying out the red carpet, you kind of have that emotion involved where you are vested in this person now because you've spent some time getting to know them. And because there are a lot of shops in general that are really desperate for people, they will overpromise, right? And I think one of the things that I would challenge our industry on doing is look at it from the standpoint of when you're bringing that person in, be completely upfront with them on some things, right? Of, you know what, this is where we fall short. This is where, in this area that we fall short, we feel like bringing you in is going to help us level up that, right? And if it is something culturally where you bring in somebody with a personality, you can point out, hey, we feel like your personality would really help us here. And so pointing to things directly saying, by bringing you in, we feel like you are going to bring the level of our shop up. And I think that actually has a really, really nice tone to it, and it is truthful, right? Like you're bringing that person in to make your operation better. And if you can point out like, hey, we kind of suck at this part and we think bringing you in would really, really help us out there, I think that helps build that trust that, hey, this person isn't just trying to sell me sunshine and rainbows. They actually are giving me the inside scoop. When you talked about having them spend some time with the foreman, I love that because it is, it's not just me putting the hard sale on you. It's go find out for yourself. Go talk to them, learn the good, the bad, the ugly, and
Hmm.
really truly understand what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I mean, you have to paint the full picture. And to your point about, talking about, hey, with us bringing you in, these are what our goals are. Don't just talk about the goals themselves. Talk about how that individual is going to directly correlate to those goals and help the shop grow. Because it's easy to say, oh, well, if we add 5 technicians, we're going to start doing 600 more hours a month. Well, okay. And I just made those numbers up for the people listening.
Yeah,
They're like, wait, that math doesn't math. Um, it's easy to sit there and say that, but if you're not intentional about how you're going to get there and how these techs actually are going to get you there, what does your lead generation look like? Are you using artificial intelligence? Where are these other hours and ROs going to come from? And talking to that tech about it and say, this is where you fit into that puzzle, right? Um, because that just makes such a huge difference. Because if you just say, "Oh, well, we're gonna get there by bringing you on board," well, what if you're 6 months in after you've hired that person and you're not there yet? That has the opposite of the trust effect. You're now looking at that service manager of, well, he promised me all these sunshine and rainbows of we're gonna get there. I'm struggling to flag 90 hours of pay period right now. I need to start looking for a job somewhere else. And that has a domino effect across your shop. It only
it
takes
does.
one tech in there saying, man, this service manager promised me A, B, and C. He has no clue what he's talking about. They clearly don't have a plan. And that spreads across your shop. So, to your point about the good, the bad, the ugly, you need to be realistic, right? And it's easy for all of us to want to say all of our shops and stores are sunshine and rainbows. I was at Wyotech last week interviewing technicians, and I tell them all the time is like, look, yes, we do a lot of things right. Always. There's also things we do wrong. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything is perfect, everything is sunshine and rainbows. And I tell those students, if you ever have a manager that tells you everything is always sunshine and rainbows, they are lying to you and run for the hills. Because that means they're not only lying to you, they're lying to themselves. Um, do do we try our hardest to make everything that way? 100%. Right? I mean, nobody likes having an issue with an employee. Nobody likes having that conversation of, hey, boss, I only flagged 60 hours this pay period. I'm going to struggle to pay rent. I'm going to struggle to feed my family. Nobody likes having those conversations. Um, but if you're setting proper expectations with these candidates and telling them up front, hey, this is where I'm actually at today, pull up your dashboard, turn the screen around and show them the actual numbers, right? There's no harm in that. It's not like you're giving away patented or proprietary information. The numbers are the numbers. And say, look, this is where you fit into these numbers. This is what I can promise you you're going to be able to do here. And if that means to get them comfortable, you need to guarantee them hours for the first 90 days or 6 months, then that's what you got to do, right? If they're skeptical of, hey, I understand your mission, I understand how you're going to get there, I'm just concerned that it might take some time to get there, that's when you start getting creative with your offer, right? And start saying, okay, well, clearly that's more important to them than maybe the sign-on bonuses or whatever the case may be, or even the flag rate itself. So that's when you start getting creative with the offers. So it's really important to understand not just what's important to us, but what is important to them. And you learn that through proper interviewing and asking the right questions and going into your interviews. And I've said this word a bunch of times, but with good intent, right? Knowing what your intent is from this interview and knowing what your intent is behind the questions you're asking and not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions.
That interview process is one that we talked before the show about how unintentional a lot of our industry is going into that, and maybe a lack of training of, a manager that you put into that seat. Maybe you're just relying on their prior experience, but there are a lot of interviewers that go into it very unprepared, and maybe not with the intentionality of trying to understand, does this person fit who we are, but hey, we're desperate to find somebody. They seem like they can do the job, let's hire them and get them in, right? And I think those questions are so important to think through and understand that, when you're asking a question in an interview, you're trying to extract something out of that, right? You're not just trying to sit down and BS with the person. You're trying to actually learn about them, and the reason why you ask maybe questions are that make them think is that you're trying to get them to really tell you who they are, and you're trying to understand whether they fit your organization or not. And by not asking the right questions, it just kind of leaves things up to assumptions. Now, I will say that I'm interested in your strategy for this. Going into an interview, I've noticed different managers have different styles, right? Like some are more conversational at the beginning, some are very serious. My style is I try to make them comfortable when they come in for an interview, because I want their true self. And you can typically read on their body language when they come in, whether, they're just terrified and they're nervous to be there. So you're just trying to settle them down a little bit so that they answer the questions like they normally would.
Yep.
Uh, or, you do get those occasionally where they come in and they don't care. Like they're ready to make it rip regardless. So I, any suggestions there on strategy of like going into the interview and how you prepare the questions, and really maybe a style in which you choose as a leader when you're going into that interview?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail on the head in that everybody kind of has their own interview style, right? And I don't want to say that any one way is wrong, because there's really not. I think what you're comfortable with as an individual plays a major role in the style you need to have. With that being said, there are some things that I've noticed in my career that help more times than not. And there are drawbacks to my interview style as well. So I typically take more of a conversational style personally, is and that's what I really encourage our managers to do as well. So something I launched when I joined the organization, probably about 8 or 9 months in, is a formalized manager interview training. One of the benefits of me having the learning and development side under me as well is I was able to help utilize that team to help me build this training. And we went around and did a 4 hour long class with every single manager who was responsible for interviewing in our organization. And it is, I mean, the content in there is from how to read and decipher a resume. What are things you're looking on or looking for on a resume? Grammatical issues, formatting, structure, objective statements, repetitive duties and responsibilities. I mean, you can learn a lot about somebody just by reading their resume. Do I think you can 100% learn about somebody by reading their resume? No. But can you tell quite a little bit about the way that person's brain ticks before you meet them? Absolutely. So what I encourage my managers to do to the best of their abilities is keep it conversational, right? So there's a structure I've always done with interviewing that I found to be successful. So typically what I'll do is my standard interview is typically 45 minutes to an hour. Especially if it's an initial phone screen, that can be 20, 30 minutes and you're probably good. But an in-person interview with the decision maker needs to be at least 45 minutes to an hour. Anybody who tells me they can learn everything about somebody in 20 minutes, I will challenge them on that to my grave, because it's just wrong, unless you know them personally already. But typically what I do first when they come in, after I've introduced myself and all that jazz, is I lay out the structure of the way that conversation's about to go. I say, hey, Jay, this conversation is probably going to be 45 minutes to an hour. I just want to walk you through kind of the structure of this so you kind of know what to expect going into it. I'm going to have you start us off by just walking me through a little bit of your resume. I want to get to know you. Where are you from? What's bringing you to me? Your work experiences. I don't want you to go through the whole thing. I want you to focus on your last two positions for me. Walk me through your day to day. Walk me through the interactions you have with your manager, your leader, your foreman, whatever the case may be. And I want you to take about 10 minutes to do that. The reason you want to give them a time is it's almost like a little test, right? You've given them a small assignment of saying, okay, I need this done within the next 10 minutes. Are they going to be able to hear that instruction and follow it? Or is this going to be somebody who's going to talk your ear off for 45 minutes? Which there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's just something you need to know about a candidate going into it, right? If they walk into your office and say, hey, boss, you got a minute, you need to know if that person's like me who can talk for an hour about nothing. And I recognize that about myself.
Same here. Same here. Absolutely. Yeah.
So like I know that about myself, right? So you need to know that about that person going into it. And so give them that direct instruction. Don't time it on your phone or anything like that. It doesn't have to be, oh, they went 5 seconds over. Nope, decline. But it's just so you can know, did they hear the assignment or did they understand the assignment? And then you say from there, I want to get to know more about you, right? So you're giving me an opportunity to learn about you. I want to learn more about you, but I definitely want to also give you an opportunity to learn more about us, right? So after you go through your resume, I'll probably have 5 to 7 questions for you. I may even slide them in as you're going through your resume, so don't let me throw you off track if that's the case. But I also want to give you the chance to learn about us, right? So I'm going to talk to you about our company, who we are, what we're focused on, where we're going. I'm going to talk to you about my shop individually. I'm going to walk you through how many hours we're doing on a monthly basis. How many techs do we have? And of those techs, are we a specialized shop or are we a bumper to bumper shop? How many master techs do we have? How many foremen? How many dispatchers, right? I'm going to walk you through all the things that I think you want to know. We will talk about scheduling, I promise. And we're also going to talk a little bit about compensation. The reason it is really important to highlight that you're going to cover those two things in your interview is those are the two most important things to a candidate. What is the work schedule and what is my pay going to look like? The moment they know that you're going to automatically bring up that topic, you're going to immediately see them relax. Because that's the most awkward thing as a candidate to bring up. Regardless of the job you're interviewing for.
For sure. Yes.
It is. And so the moment they know that you're the one bridging that gap for them, you're going to see a whole different person. And then make sure to tell them at the end, I promise I'm going to leave you at least 10 minutes to ask me any follow-up questions you may have. So they then know as they're taking notes and remembering things, if they had a question about something you said and they don't want to interrupt, they can go ahead and write that down because they then know they have time at the end to ask those additional questions.
Well, and it plants that seed too, right? That I think a lot of interviewers will go all the way through it and then say, all right, do you have questions for me? And it's almost like you're surprising them with it, right? Whereas if you kind of plant the seed up front with all of that, you are showing that you have some structure in that process and that you will give them time to talk about, maybe concerns that they have or questions that they have, and that they don't have to force it into conversation in a very awkward way, which I think a lot of people set themselves up for when they are interviewing because they don't set the stage like you're talking about. That's really, really good advice.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to do it. And one thing I want to discourage everybody from doing in recruiting, regardless of the job, do not do a question answer format. It's boring for you. It's boring for them. You're only going to learn the questions you're asking. And that's it, right? It's going to be a very surface level interview. You're only going to learn the answers to the questions you're asking. Versus if you keep it very conversational and through them going through their resume, you should be taking notes on things they're saying and then tie your interview questions into the things they told you when walking through their background is, hey, you mentioned that at your job at O'Reilly's that you had a really interesting relationship with your manager. I want to learn a little bit more about that, right? What was that relationship like? And I want you to give me an example of a time that you and that manager clashed heads. How did you approach that scenario? what did that conversation look like and how did you overcome that? Because in our industry, and especially in times in shops, there's going to be times where I may go out there and ask you guys to do something that you don't agree with. And that's okay. You're allowed to disagree with me, but I need to know how you're going to handle those types of situations. So through that
I
one
saw,
little thing that they told you at the very beginning, you can then tie in a very good scenario-based question, a behavioral-based question to learn about that person. And so I did a whole class on this. I can talk for 4 hours about interviewing. And one of the big things we look for, and I stole this from a book, and you and I have talked about this offline, and this is a book I want to implore everybody listening to go read if you are a manager, a leader, or even if you're not one. It's called The Ideal Team Player. And it bases what you're looking for in three core things: hungry, humble, and smart. Hunger is what we all think it is, right? Are you willing to go above and beyond? Are you the kind of person that if you're in the middle of a job and it's 7 o'clock and you know you have nothing going on at home, and the manager says, "Hey, I know you're only about an hour done with that. If you stay, you can just knock it out so you can get a new RO the next morning"? Are you the kind of person where as soon as 5 o'clock comes around, you lay your tools down regardless of where you're at and you walk away? Um, Humble is probably one of the most important for any job in any dealership, any organization, any industry, anywhere, right? And the one thing people need to realize is there's a difference between humility and confidence, right? You can be confident and still be humble. You can also be too humble. And then smart, a lot of people think this is intelligence, like just genuine intelligence, right? To some degree it is, especially for a tech, right? Like you got to be intuitive, you got to be smart, you got to know how to do the things. But their certifications and their experience are going to teach you that. What you need to be looking for is their emotional intelligence. And that's where those behavioral type questions in the interview really come into play, putting them in scenarios that you know happen in your shop on a regular basis without telling them that. Hey, I want to give you an example, and I want you to tell me how you would handle this situation. See how they respond. Same thing's true with hungry and humble. You know, it all comes down to your questions and the questions you ask in your interview to identify those things. And in the book itself, in the back of it, it literally gives you questions you can ask in interviews to help identify those things. And so when I came on board, at first I had my recruiting team read it because I needed them to get on board with that methodology first, because we're the first line of defense, if you will. And so I needed them to understand what we're looking for. Then I was able to trickle that down to our field. And while I would have loved to have been able to do a company-wide book club with everybody on this book, that's just not reality. And so in that manager interview training we built, we put the video in there of breaking down hungry, humble, smart. Linchoni did a TEDx talk on it many years ago. And so we were able to pull that video off YouTube and show it to him. And I cannot even begin to tell you how many aha moments were had in managers watching that video of just like, it makes perfect sense. I don't know why I did not break this down earlier and start doing this sooner. Because it breaks down all well, I need an A-type personality with a little bit of B-type. I need this, I need that. I can guarantee you, if you hire for hungry, humble, and smart 100% of the time, all that other stuff's going to work itself out. It's just the truth of it. This is not the first time I've implemented this methodology in an organization. We did it at King Garf when I was there, and we saw a drastic reduction in turnover in the first 12 months of implementing it and putting this as part of our interview guides. So at our organization, we provide our managers with the interview guides for the specific roles. Are they perfect? No. I'm not going to sit here and say that I created the perfect interview guides, because I didn't. But what I tell them, and in this training I help them understand, is the intent behind the question, right? This is a hungry question. This is a humble question. This is a smart question.
Love that.
And so what I tell them to do, there's three things I always tell them to do before every interview. One, about an hour before the interview, you need to review the resume. I know, and this keeps me up at night, that a lot of our managers look at the resume for the first time 5 minutes before the interview. It's literally one of the things that keeps me up at night. You need to go through that resume and highlight or target specific things you want to ask questions about. and then look at your interview guide and look at the resume and determine what hungry question, what humble question, and what smart question am I going to ask this candidate based on their resume, based on what my knowledge of the industry, based on the places they've worked at. I want to be intentional with these questions I'm asking. Which ones am I going to ask and why? And I want them to know that going into the interview, so they know when they ask the question, if the candidate doesn't give them the type of response that they're looking for, they know to ask the question again a different way. They know to ask good follow-up questions after the interview. And so a lot of times managers will take the first answer a candidate gives you and say, okay, that was a good answer. Let's move to the next one. When in reality, there was 3 good follow-up questions to that one question. And the way, and we did this with all of our managers across the organization, not just service managers. I said, think about this as if you are qualifying somebody for a car. You know, if they say, oh, I need a 4-door sedan. Well, why? Oh, well, we go on lots of road trips as a family. Well, where do you go on road trips? Oh, well, we do a lot of like backpacking, hiking, those types of things. That salesperson just identified, okay, this person may need a 4x4. Okay, well, what type of gear are you bringing with you on that trip? Oh, we have backpacks, stoves, tents. They start going through the list, right? Oh, well, that salesperson now knows, well, now they probably need an SUV, maybe an extended back end, right? Someone has more trunk space. Because I know through the previous question I asked that that car is full, every single seat's full. So they're going to need that extended in the back. Okay. So now instead of looking at a Escape, we're looking at an Expedition XL or an Expedition Max, just by asking very simple questions. The same thing is true in interviewing. If you take it at face value, that's all it's going to be, is face value. But if you take the time and ask good follow-up questions and seek to understand, your interviews are going to be 100 times better. You're going to walk away from that interview and knowing more about that person than they probably know about themselves. And you're going to be able to make a good, educated decision on if this is somebody you do want to roll the red carpet out for. Because you don't want to roll it out for everybody, because then it loses its allure, right? Like, it's, well, they do this for everybody. This is just normal. You know, you're not going to treat a 20-year senior master the same way you would a kid coming straight out of UTI or Wyotek, right? It's just different in terms of rolling out the red carpet. Now, you still need to interview the same. You need to be intentional. You still need to offer them relocation assistance. You need to still offer a lot of the same things, but it may not be as big of a deal of, okay, we're going to fly you out 3 times to look at apartments and we're going to wine and dine you and all these other things, right? So you have to know your audience at the same time. So yeah, I cannot stress enough how important that hour-long interview is, and the questions you ask and the intent you go in with it. Because if you go in, I'm gonna excuse my language, but if you go into it half-assed, it's going to be a half-assed interview. And you're going to get a half-assed candidate, and it's going to be a half-assed process. And it starts at the very beginning.
You're so right. And as you're talking through that, it's in my head identified times that I've done that, right? Where I've not kind of asked that follow-up question. And a lot of times I love what you talk about with reviewing the resume an hour beforehand, because I do think it starts to get your brain thinking in the right mindset, right? Rather than rushing in 5 minutes before, looking at the resume, you've got a million things going on, and your focus isn't on that person that's in front of you. Your focus is on putting out all the fires that you just walked away from.
Yep.
And it is hard to shift your mindset in getting kind of just present in the moment when you are going like crazy. And the impact that has, if you don't treat that properly, is that you don't go through the process correctly, and it ends up in you hiring somebody that's not a right fit for your company. And in a lot of cases, that person sticks around for 5 or 10 years, and it is, might start to annoy you because you didn't ask the right questions. And so, not spending the time up front. And I think there's a lot of value in just asking, like, do I like this person? Would I like want to hang out with this person? Or like just being able to truly, from an interviewer standpoint, be able to take a step back and say, hey, would I really like this person on my team? Would I, do they add value to us? And then asking the right questions, being in the right frame of mind when you do go into it. Uh, it's not just that hour impact that it's going to have. It is years of impact if you make maybe the wrong call, or maybe they're just good enough to do the job, but to keep the job, but it's some of those really annoying things that happen if you're not intentional in those conversations. And I know I've been guilty of it over the years, and
Same
not
here.
going through that process correctly. But I took a lot out of what you just said there, and I think it will change my mindset in how I go about it at times.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not lost on me that every organization doesn't have a recruiting department, especially in our industry. I think it's something that's becoming more and more organizations are starting to get it in the automotive industry, but not every organization does. And so I want to encourage everybody who's listening, if you are a manager or a leader, you know, there's so many resources online that you can go to help you with your interviewing and your thought process behind it and the questions to ask. And read that book, The Ideal Team Player. I've read that book 10
Great
times
book.
over at this point, and I will tell everybody I am not a reader. My ADHD does not allow for that. I can't sit still long enough to read a book, but it's about 150 pages. You're reading a fable about a situation an executive went through, so it's a really easy read. You're not just reading concepts and theories the entire time. Um, I've learned every time I pick up that book, I learn something new. And I mean, first time I read it was 10 plus years ago when I started in recruiting. And so there's a lot of resources out there where you can help yourself without somebody needing to give you the information. And so if you want to become those regional fixed ops directors, if you want to become those higher level positions, being able to hire and retain the top people is a quick way to help you get there. Some of the best shops are the shops that have almost no turnover. They have the best culture. And, you had mentioned this a second ago, Jay, that this could be a multi-year problem, right? Well, let's remove that from the equation and let's just talk about cost to hire somebody. The average
It,
cost from like you talk about recruiting costs to onboarding to benefits and everything else, typically industry average from the moment somebody applies to the moment they start, you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 of total expense. And that's
yeah,
just for them to start. That doesn't even include, that's just from applying to day one. That doesn't include if that person comes in and doesn't do well and blows out after 6 months. Well, I think the math behind this is take 2.5 times that person's pay, and that's what it costs you to lose that individual. So if you have a tech that's making 120 grand a year and they've been there for a year and they leave to go somewhere else because it's not a culture fit, that loss is costing you $240,000 because of how long it takes to get somebody else in that, to find somebody, one, two, get them onboarded and hired, three, get them trained up and get them to the same level that tech was at. It's going to take you 8 or 9 months. And so we're not just talking about, a $500 Indeed ad or, a Facebook marketing campaign driving to the WrenchWay page. It's so much bigger than that. And the loss your shop is going to feel if you hire the wrong person and get them trained and then they leave, the loss is so much larger than just the time and the little bit of money that goes in to get them started. It's so much bigger.
oh yeah, and I think there are a lot of folks that don't take that part seriously, right? Like it
Yeah.
is, I think in a lot of ways viewed as an expense, to have kind of that intentional recruiting, but the money that you lose in production by not having the right staff and the right number of staff is really what all of this effort, it really pales in comparison to what you're losing out on the shop floor each and every day. So I couldn't agree more. As we get close to the end of this, I did want to touch on a couple things. We're not going to get to everything we talked about, so we're going to have you
Yeah.
back on again here soon. Not shocking to either of us, I don't think.
Not at
That
all.
yeah, well, it'll be a series going on. But one thing I did want to talk about. was ease of application. And when I say that, applying to your job, the importance of making it easy for them. You talked about careers pages to start, and you talked about some different things, but one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is how difficult a lot of our industry makes it to even apply to your job. And we've done exercises through WrenchWay in the past where we just have somebody go in and we'll do like a workshop and say, okay, go apply to your own job. And they go through the process and they're like, that sucked. Like that was hard to do. And
Yep.
everything we talked about and how hard it is to find these people, and you do so much work on the employer branding side and then put them through torture to apply to your position and wonder why you can't get people to apply. How important is it to have ease of application for that person that is interested in coming to work for you?
It's probably one of the most important things, and this isn't even just apply to techs. I mean, this applies to all positions within a dealership. On average, if your application's taking longer than 12 to 15 minutes, you're seeing about 70 to 80% drop off of your applications because they just get tired of it, they get distracted, they get pulled in a different direction, and they just forget about it. And so there's always restraints you have with whatever applicant tracking system your organization uses. There's some legal compliance things you have to have in there, and that just kind of is what it is. But getting creative and finding ways to make it easier for them to apply. That's one of the many things I've loved about WrenchWay is I'd rather drive all of our text to WrenchWay because it's a much quicker application. It's name, phone number, email address, upload a resume if you have one. If not, fill in some information and you're good to go. Um, our application from start to finish takes about 10 minutes. If you're intentional about it, right? If you're sitting there knocking it out. Now, if you get distracted or whatever, sure, it's going to take you longer. Um, Also making sure that it's not only desktop friendly, but is your application mobile friendly? That's also very important. If I were to go look at my Indeed statistics, I bet you 60 to 70% of our applications come from mobile versus desktop, if not even a much higher number than that. Um, and so you can do it in a lot of different ways, for organizations that, you have a smaller HR team and you don't have a recruiting team, there's probably not a whole lot you can do to change your application in your HR system or your applicant tracking system. Um, there are some things you can do, but sometimes you're just at the will of the system. Where you need to think outside the box and get creative is, okay, I want to make this as easy as possible. There's platforms like yours out there, Jay, like WrenchWay, that make it super easy. And I can rave about your platform till the end of the earth. And
We appreciate it.
yeah, there's so many things I love about WrenchWay. Um, but let's say WrenchWay's on a path you want to go down. Think about doing a Facebook targeted ad, sign up for a platform where you can do, hey, text 7979 if you're interested. And you have it auto generated where all it asks for is their name, phone number, email address, and then what job and position they're interested in. And that sends an application to you through email for you to go ahead and reach out to that candidate. You can do that as well. There's so many different ways. Indeed, I use them a whole lot. And the
Yeah.
Indeed quick apply is you click one button if you have an Indeed account and your Indeed resume goes right across. So for a lot of our technician ads, when we post them on Indeed and we sponsor them, I tell my team those need to be quick applies and quick applies only. If we're being intentional about, we need techs, we need them now. If it's a, hey, we're always going to have a tech posting up, we're always interested in good qualified candidates, that's different. But if it's a, hey, we just renovated the shop, I went from 7 stalls to 17 stalls, I need 10 techs tomorrow. Okay, again, the intentional word, we need to be intentional about this. Make it as quick to apply as humanly possible. Sponsor it on Indeed Quick Apply, and you can do that with or without an account. You don't have to have an account rep and a major contract with Indeed to do those types of things. You can go on there and post a single job, put $20, $30 a day on it, and see what gets in your area. You can do Facebook targeted ads and other markets because the Indeed ads will only drive traffic within 25 miles with the radius of your dealership. And so you can do a Facebook ad that drives to your Indeed posting and you can post it in other cities. What we have started doing, and I know you know this, Jay, is we've been driving them all to WrenchWay. And I cannot even begin to tell you the success we've had with that. Um, I mean, just to tell everybody listening, I mean, we did one Facebook targeted ad last month and we had over 8,000 page visitors from one Facebook targeted ad across the nation. Actually, it was four,
Incredible.
but one for each dealership. And we had a total of, I think it was 7,900 and some change page visits in the matter of a week and a half. I mean, it's just
That's
nuts.
and
um,
results out of it too. That was the cool part of seeing what you were doing with it. A lot of success. But I think it all goes back to what I said earlier at the top, where it was because you have a different mindset in a lot of ways from a lot of people, where I think you put the pieces of the puzzle together, and we talked about that with staffing in general. But for you, in your strategy and looking at it through a more strategic lens, thought, okay, I can piece this together with this, and really drive the results that we want to see. And I think as we wrap this up, that's one of the things that I would challenge everybody on is look at things through a little bit of a different lens. You're the first person that I've talked to that actually timed out your application process versus ours, or you've done different things that really truly were looking through the lens of the person that was applying to the job. And I think for people listening to this, a great takeaway is to think a little bit more like Brad, in that sense that we're looking to find different ways to make things happen. And I don't know that you're ever satisfied in terms of that, right? You're always trying to get better. You're always trying to figure out a different way. And I think it's what's led to so much success with you is that you just have the right attitude and the right vision for a lot of things that quite frankly a lot of people don't. So it's a lot of credit to you and the success that you've had. You're good at your job for a reason, and I think you and I just have a lot of similarities in general. But that's one of those things where I look at you and I say that's a person that's going to get some stuff done, right? Like you do a phenomenal job.
well, I appreciate that. And we live in a business of now, right? Automotive is now. We live in 30-day cycles. If you're lucky, you live in 60-day cycles. But for the most part, we all live in 30-day cycles. And when it comes to recruiting, you have to have that same mindset. It has to be the now mentality. When our VP of Ops, Marion, reaches out to me, he's like, "Hey, we got some stuff going on here, here, and here. We need movement like ASAP." If I let that wait a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm not helping our business grow, right? And I have the mindset of my job is here to support the stores. That is my core purpose in this organization, is to support the stores and help them be successful. Because if they're successful, the company's successful, which means I'm successful, right? And if the company's successful, that allows us to go acquire new stores. That allows us to grow. That allows me to grow within the organization, because then the recruiting team grows, the training team grows, right? It all ties together at the end of the day. So when I see one of our shops struggling, I take that personally. If I see them struggling, now if they're struggling because it's not a staffing issue, then I can't control that. But if they're struggling because they're like, "Look, I'm down 5 techs. I mean, I'm 2 weeks backed up right now," I take that personally. My team takes that personally, because we try to be true business partners with all of our stores in every way possible. So we all have skin in this game. We're all in this fight together. So that way our managers don't feel like, "Oh, well, I'm waiting on corporate to get back to me. I haven't gotten anything yet." They know what's going on. Every fixed ops manager and every general manager in our company has my cell phone number. Every single one of them. And they know they can call me at 7 in the morning, or they can call me at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm going to pick up the phone. Shoot, we were on a cruise in January and I answered 4 work phone calls while we were on vacation. That really bode well with my wife, but I was able
You
to.
also you also answered one of my emails, and I said, "Stop answering my stuff. Go back to vacation."
I think we were in Roatan when I answered your email. We were in Roatan, Honduras. But I mean, it all comes down to the intent, right? If I sit back and just wait, anybody can do that. The organization can hire anybody to sit out here and post and pray. I think any fixed ops manager, any leader listening to this can do that. My 12-year-old nephew can go on Indeed and post a job and pray that somebody applies to it, right? What everybody can't do is be that winner who's going to do whatever it takes to go get that tech. You know, I love when our managers call me and challenge me, and say, hey, I know you're doing A, B, and C, but have you thought about this, this, and this? Actually, no, I haven't. Let me look into that for you. Hey, I know we've got the job posted on all these platforms. Have you reached out to the local school? What kind of relationship do we have with them? When they get me thinking out of the box, where I'm like, okay, you're right, I do need to do that, right? Let me pick up the phone and let me get on that. So there's definitely a lot of all of us holding each other accountable here to getting to the end result, because we're all in this fight together. We're all in this battle to get together. And so when I see them be successful, or my team gets a shout out on our leadership calls or whatever the case may be, my team takes that to heart because they know how hard it was to achieve that goal, right? Because we are in this together. And so I think that's one thing that's equipped me to be successful for our industry is I live in the now as much as, at least when it comes to work. And it's okay. You need something. Let's figure it out now. I'm not going to wait 2-3 weeks. And let's do our best to get it. I'm also a realist at the end of the day. I tell my managers, hey, this could take 2 weeks or this could take 3 months, right? I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball that could tell me how fast I was going to get you a tech, but just know that I'm going to do everything in my power to make it happen. Doesn't mean the result will be there, but I promise you're going to know what's going on. What are we doing? What are we trying? All of that. And so sometimes that's a lot of it too. As long as they know we're trying, they're like, okay, well, I don't have any better ideas than what they're doing, so I guess I got to sit back and wait. So it's I wish I could say it was all me, but it's not. It's all my team, just giving them the tools they need to be successful, encouraging them to think outside the box, push the limits, have difficult conversations with our managers, encourage them to be aggressive with these managers. I wish I could say it was me, but it's not. It's all my team, and it always has been. So I'm nothing without them. So
That's why you're the best of the best. We will do another episode soon. I can promise you that. We didn't even get to the school stuff. I think there's a whole episode that we have on that we need to do, just because of some of the amazing things you're doing there as well, and the importance of that. I just thank you for spending time with me here today,
course.
and hopefully we can get you back on to do some more of them. You were great. I learned a lot, as I always do when I talk to you, and it was a true pleasure.
No, same here. Thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it. I'm always available to talk, as you know. I'm never down to turn down a conversation. So I look forward to being on again soon, and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.